Hello everyone, and welcome into another episode of Matt Sports Talk. And this video we are going to be going over the updated quad records. I'm waiting for the the first edition of the ARC rankings to be released, and they are not posted at this particular time, so I may have to record a video tomorrow going over those, or at least whenever I see those uploaded, which again, if they are not uploaded today, I will be posting, or I'll definitely be recording a video tomorrow going over the first edition of the ARC numbers. And however, and we are, at least the good news is, we are going to be able to go over the updated, or the first edition rather, of the quad records. And this is a major factor into national tournament selection from the NAIA National Tournament Selection Committee. And of course, I apologize in advance. I'm recording this at my desktop computer, as for whatever reason my iPad seems to not really be cooperating with my internet, so I don't know exactly what that issue is. But, and again, I truly apologize, because normally I do all these videos looking at my iPad, but I apologize as well for my iPhone moving around a little bit as I'm holding it with my left hand. But rest assured, we are going to still be able to go over the updated, or the first edition rather, of the ARC, of the quad records. And I mentioned that this is among the primary criteria that the NAIA National Tournament Selection Committee looks at for seeding teams into the NAIA National Tournament. Now, of course, you can see on this list there are a lot of, and I apologize for all my computer pop-ups on the bottom right, but we are going to be looking at that, and I'm squarely going to be looking at the Crossroads League schools in this video. So you can see here, I'll adjust my cursor right here, Bethel of Indiana, and now this is the quad records, and the Crossroads League is among those teams in the North edition, and you can see that teams in the WAC, the River States, and the Chicago, the CSAC, the Chicago Collegiate Athletic Conference, all of these teams are in the North ARC. And so we look at first at Bethel of Indiana, and now they are 13-6 after losing to Indiana Wesleyan at home on Saturday. You can see, and obviously you look here. I adjusted. I'll zoom into my screen here, or my computer. You can see quad 1, quad 2, quad 3. So quad 1 is here, and then quad 2 is over here, and then quad 3 is here, and quad 4 is up there. And these quads, you really want to be looking at quad 1 and 2 for national tournament selection. And the reason why is because it's kind of, I know it can sound a little bit confusing. However, they primarily look at quad 1 because quad 1, 9 times out of 10, is going to be the teams that you are playing in your respective conference. And now quad 2, yes, there are some teams in your conference that are going to be in quads 2, 3, and 4, and more so the teams that are going to be over here in quads 3 and 4 are going to be the teams that are lower down in your conference. For example, the Crossroads League, with teams like Mount Vernon, Nazarene, and Goshen that are down at the bottom of the RPI numbers. Now, because those two teams are down, or really down in the RPI, remember there's 220 NAIA teams, and of course I learned this after watching a video that was recorded a little over a month ago, that you have to look at to think of it like this. If for teams that are in the latest edition of the RPI, if their RPI ranking is between 1 and 50, then if you play a team that is within the 1 to 50 range of the latest RPI, if you play any of those teams at home on your home floor, that qualifies as a quad 1 game. If you play teams that are outside, now out of 0 to 50 in the RPI, if you play teams that are within that range at home, then again, I mentioned that qualifies as quad 1. Now, on the flip side of that, if you play, let's say, that team that in the latest edition is in the top 50 in the RPI, but later on in the season drops below the 0 to 50 threshold, then that win would move to quad 2. Now, if you play a team at home that is between, let's say, 51 and 10, really between 51 and 102 in the latest RPI rating, then that qualifies as a quad 2 game. And then if you play teams that are roughly 103 to 153 in the latest RPI rating, then you would get down over here to quad 3. And if you play a team that is really below 154 down to 220, then that more than likely would be over here, would fall into the quad 4 category. Now, if you play a team on the road that is between, let's say if you play a team on the road that is within the top 65. If you play a team in the RPI 0 to 65, then that also qualifies as a quad 1 game if the team that you play is in the top 50 in the RPI. If that game is on the road, then that also qualifies, I believe, as quad 2. But I'm still, learning the process with that, with this being my first year, really understanding all of that process, how all that plays out. So again, bear with me on that. So we look at Bethel in the Crossroads. You can see here their quad 1 record is 1-5. Now in their quad, at least based on the last RPI rating that came out yesterday, and I recorded a video talking about that, the only game since that the only game that Bethel has won against a top 50 RPI opponent was against Huntington. Now remember, Bethel did upset Huntington at home, and Huntington is well within the top 50 in the RPI, so therefore that particular game would qualify as quad 1, meaning that was the very first win of the year for the Lady Pilots in quad 1. You can see quad 2, they are 5-1, and I'll zoom in a little bit closer here, right where my cursor is, to where you can see there, that's 5-1. Yeah, we're right. I'm trying to see on my iPhone camera here. There we go. So Bethel, Indiana. So yep, here's the white thing right here. So we're right there, 5-1 and quad 2 for Bethel. Not too terribly bad. Again, now obviously for the Pilots, you would want to see a much higher number in quad 1, but having a 5-1 record in quad 2 is still really, really important for them. And then, of course, they're 4-0 and 3-0, respectively, in quads 3 and 4. Now, quads 3 and 4, now, while, yes, those are still important, they are not quite as important as quads 1 and 2 in terms of a national tournament. So that is a view of Bethel. So going down to the next team in the Crossroads League, and that will take us down to, well, obviously, Goshen, they're struggling this year. Their only win this year is quad 4, where they are 3-1, but they're not a team that's going to be in the national tournament. So you get down here to Grace in the Crossroads, right here, right where my cursor is. Now, they are 1-7 in quad 1. Now, for them, they, of course, when they went on the road and upset Indiana Wesleyan at IWU last Saturday on January 10th, then for them, that would qualify as a quad 1 win because the Wildcats were within the top 60, because the Wildcats were between 0 and 65, and for the Lancers, that game was on the road, meaning that if they played a team between 0 and 65, and that was listed between 0 and 65 in the RPI, for Grace being on the road in that scenario, that's why that game became a quad 1 win. Now, should the Wildcats fall below 65 in the RPI by the end of the season, then that win would go over to quad 2, where the Lancers have not played any games or have not played against any teams within quad 2. Now they are 4-2 in quad 3 and 3-0 in quad 4, but 1-7 in quad 1. This, I don't expect them to make the national tournament, so I'm not really going to talk really about them. Now another team that would be in the national tournament for sure, and a team that I think would definitely be in would be Huntington. You see them right here, right where the white arrow is on my cursor. And now you look at them, they're 5-5 in quad 1, so not great, but not terrible either. Now, one thing that is going for them is they are 3-0 in quad 2, which obviously that is really, really important for them and definitely gives them that extra boost, so to speak, as they are looking to book themselves into a national tournament for the second straight year. And so, obviously for them, they have some room to improvement, especially if they can get more Quad 1 wins. Now, remember, they still have to play the big four teams ahead of them in the second time this year, and that being, of course, Taylor right below them. They still got to play Taylor a second time, and then they got to play St. Francis, Marion, and Spring Arbor a second time. Now, if the Lady Forcers can put together some of those key wins, especially against the three teams ahead of them, then that would really, really help them in Quad 1, and more than likely would definitely punch their ticket into a national tournament, no question about that. And I'm going to get back to Indiana Wesleyan here in just a minute. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about Marion and St. Francis, because you look at Marion, 7-2 in Quad 1, 3-0 in Quad 2. Not really worried about them. They definitely should be locked into the national tournament, no question about that. And then going down to St. Francis right here, right where my cursor is, not really worried about them. 7-1 in Quad 1. Their only Quad 1 loss coming to Indiana Wesleyan. And then they're undefeated in all other quads. Again, they're another for sure lock into the national tournament. So not really going to talk really anymore about them. And then you get down to Spring Arbor. Now, Spring Arbor, while I do think they are a definite lock in the national tournament, we can see them right here, right where my white arrow is. They are 3-3 in Quad 1, and they are 5-0 in Quad 2. So really, really impressive there. And obviously, you know, they really need to string together several more wins in Quad 1. But again, I think they're for sure locking the national tournament, so I'm not really concerned about them. And then you get down here to Taylor, right where my right arrow is. Now, they're a little bit more interesting. Now, while they're 7-0 in Quad 2, they are 1-4 in Quad 1, and that really is not good at all. And they could really, really use some Quad 1 wins. Now, out of their remaining schedule, the four teams that are ahead of them, meaning Huntington, Spring Arbor, St. Francis, and Marion, they are, of course, the Taylor Lady Trojans lost all of those games to those opponents the first go-around, so that's why they are 1-4 in the quad. Now, remember, when they upset Indiana Wesleyan back in November at home, the Wildcats were still in the top. They were still in the top 50 in the RPI at that time. So then, therefore, quantifies, so to speak, the win in Quad 1 for the Taylor Trojans, and now the Wildcats are below 50th in the RPI right now. So again, I'm not really sure exactly how that plays out, because for Taylor, I know that the teams below, they've beaten everybody below them. They beat Grace the first time in a big comeback win, and then of course they beat Mount Vernon Nazarene, Goshen, and Bethel. So I'm not really sure how that plays out for them. The only thing I can imagine is that their 1-4 Quad 1 record, that one win, was coming against the Wildcats back in November. At least I would think that was the case. Maybe not, but at least I would definitely say that at this point. And then as we round out the video, we will go up here to Indiana Wesleyan, right where my cursor is, right here. And the Wildcats, they are, of course, they've had a rough year. Now they are perfect in quads 3 and 4. Now they're 0-2 in quad 2, and now the reason why they're 0-2 in their second quad, more than likely, is because that when they suffered that home loss to Grace last Saturday, Grace is below 65th in the latest RPI rating, so that means that game would have been listed as would be a quad 2 game, and therefore that obviously would be the reason why the Wildcats have that one loss in quad 2. Their other quad 2 loss, more than likely, is when they lost in a big upset to St. Thomas. Now, that was at St. Thomas, by the way, and at that time, St. Thomas was within the top 65 in the RPI, or actually, I stand corrected, was below 65th in the RPI at that time, so that meant that game at St. Thomas was classified as a quad 2 game, and therefore then again the Wildcats quad 2 losses, St. Thomas and Grace, more than likely. If that's not the case, and I apologize, but having a 3-7 record in quad 1, that does not help the Wildcats, so to speak. Now they can definitely improve that number if they can pick up some big wins in the second half of conference play, especially with the teams ahead of them. Like if they're able to beat particularly Taylor, Huntington, and Spring Arbor, if the Wildcats are able to at least win 2 out of those 3, that would definitely help them. While at the same time, they definitely need to beat Grace the second time on the road. They need to beat Goshen on the road a second time, and they need to beat Mount Vernon Nazarene at home for the second time this year, while at the same time trying to pick up a couple of wins between Taylor, Huntington, Spring Arbor, Marion, and Bethel. Of course, Bethel's Bethel's within the top 50 right now in the RPI, so that game, actually, when they beat Bethel on Saturday, that actually qualified as a Quad 1 win. And then, of course, the only other Quad 1 wins the Wildcats have had, of course, one being to St. Francis, which was at home back on December 3rd. And then the other Quad 1 win would have been, I think the only other Quad 1 win the Wildcats would have had would have been College of the Ozarks, as they would have been within the top 50, and at least when they played College of the Ozarks. Again, that was on a neutral site, though, so again, I'm not really sure on that. But again, 3-7 for the Wildcats. Obviously, you want to see that number improve in the second half of conference play. So that is a view of the first edition of the Quad Records, and there is going to be another release, the second release of the Quad Records, coming up Monday, February 2nd. So I will be recording a video then going over those numbers for the updated quad at that time, and then also going over the updated RPI numbers, because we'll have a new RPI number come out also on February 2nd, so make sure that you stay tuned for both of those. That will be coming your way that Monday, the RPI and the quad records, and then the ARC rankings. Those will be, the next one of those will be coming out Tuesday, February 3rd, so I'll be recording a video that day going over all of that, so make sure that you stay tuned for that. And then, of course, the next RPI rating is coming out next Monday, next Monday, the 26th. Again, make sure that you stay tuned for that as well, and I'll be recording a video then going over all of that, and that will be the only video. Actually, that'll be the only video on Monday, which will be the updated RPI numbers, and then I'll be recording a video Sunday recapping all the Crossers League games from Saturday, so make sure that you stay tuned for all of that. So if you did enjoy this video, please either like, comment, or subscribe. Any one of those options helps me out greatly, and for those of you that are subscribed to my channel, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And for those of you that are not currently subscribed, please hit the subscribe button down below so you are first notified whenever I upload new episodes, and I truly appreciate any feedback that you may provide me. And now there are no current ARC numbers listed, so I will be keeping an eye on that, and if those are posted by tomorrow, I will be back with you tomorrow going over the first edition of the ARC numbers. So again, make sure that you stay tuned for that. And then, of course, I alluded to recapping the games, Crossers League games from this coming Saturday. I'll be doing that on Sunday, so make sure that you stay tuned for that as well. And then, of course, next Monday will be just the updated view of the RPI numbers, and then the following Monday, February 2nd, will be the new RPI numbers at that time, as well as the second edition of the quad records, which will also be out then, so make sure again that you stay tuned for that. So thank you so much for tuning in this video. Have a great rest of your day, and I will be back with you tomorrow, more than likely, going over the first edition of the ARC rankings. I will see you then, and have a great day. God bless.